everyone, and welcome to the first ever Mailbag episode of The Punchline. Hope you all had a great holiday, and let's get right into all of your questions. What are your thoughts on Peanuts? My feelings towards Peanuts are kind of complex. I respect it a lot for what it did for the comic strip as an art form and the influence it had on a whole lot of other great comic strips, but it's never personally done anything for me. I don't know exactly why, it just never really resonated with me the way Foxtrot or Calvin and Hobbes did. I'll get into my full thoughts on that in a future episode. How many script revisions do you typically go through before you find one you're happy with recording on video for the show? Typically I only write about one script actually, but I'll go through and I'll change things so much that it may not look like the same script by the time I'm done with it. I don't often keep count. What I'll usually do is I'll just sit down, hammer out a rough draft, and then go back and read it through from start to finish a couple of times until it flows right and I think I've got all the jokes or entertainment that I need. And then from there, I'll walk away from the computer for a while, do something else, work on another project, and then I'll come back down, read it one last time to make sure it's the way I want it, and then print it off and film it. Have you always disliked Garfield, or did you once like him, then grow tired of him? Well, I used to like him when I was about, 7 or 8, but I also liked things like the Power Rangers back when I was 7 or 8 too, so, you like a lot of stuff when you were a kid that you grow up and you look back at it and you go, good grief, I actually like that thing? What was I thinking? That's kind of my relationship with Garfield. Who do you think would win a scavenger hunt? Codex from Get Fuzzy or the Crocs from Pearls Before Swine? The Crocs would win easily because Codex literally cannot find his way out of a building. The Crocs at least have basic navigation skills. When will you review Baldo? I don't really schedule out Punchline episodes very far in advance. Feline Month was the most I've ever scheduled out anything for the Punchline, but Baldo is definitely now on my radar. And I do remember reading it before whenever I would visit some of my extended family in other states. I think it was a pretty good strip. I'll get around to it pretty soon though. Do you read mangas? Not really. I had a friend and roommate in college who got me into Bleach a whole lot until that started to lose quality after the final battle with Aizen. And I also read all of Maofu Sensei Nejima, which I enjoyed very much. I think it was very good, very emotional, good funny stuff, very, very good action. One of the best fight scenes I think I've ever read between Neji and Jack Racken. So that was a very good series. But aside from those two, I really don't read mangas, no. How did you get popular? I review stuff and I don't have as many viewers as you get. Any suggestions? Well, one piece of advice that I can give you is never be afraid to promote yourself as long as you do it appropriately. Put yourself in as many places as you can. Every week when I post a Punchline, I put it on my personal Facebook page, the Punchline's Facebook page, my Twitter account, Manic Expressions, and the official That Guy with the Glasses blogs. So I try and get it to as many places as I can, and any other online forums that I visit, like the That Guy with the Glasses forums. I also visit the Escapist forums a lot. And if I have a chance for something to pop up where I can say, hey, by the way, I made this video, if we're talking about online videos that we like, or unknown videos, or things that you think are good, or a chance to show off your work, then say, hey, I've done this thing, why don't you guys take a look? It's how I got a big boost early on. On that same note, if you are in the sort of industry where people are looking for good press, like in the comic strip industry that I review, if you are reviewing something that's good, don't be afraid to show it to the creators. That's how I really got my first big boost. Week 3, I think it was, I did Foxtrot, and after I did it, I sent a link to the video to Phil Amend on Twitter. Phil Amend's the cartoonist behind Foxtrot. And I also sent it off to Louis Lovehog as well, who a lot of you might know better as Linkara. They both retweeted it to their total combined following of 40,000 fans on Twitter, and my views for that Foxtrot video went through the roof, and it's still my #1 most viewed video. So don't be afraid to promote yourself. Why is your Watchmen poster turned anti-clockwise? Well, truth be told, I actually had the Watchmen poster turned that way for 2 reasons. One, the letters create a decent system of measurement. Naturally, I'm not in my room right now, but I can align where my camera is framed nowadays. I finally figured it out to a specific letter in the Watchmen poster, which would be the A, so I know how to frame up my shot. The other reason is if I turn the Watchmen poster around the other way, I would have the text like popping up out of my head, and that'd be distracting, and that would not make for a good image. Any chance of looking at or analyzing why more comics aren't gender neutral? I like a good chunk of comics, but there is a serious lack of comics aimed at women that are not about relationships, shopping, family, motherhood, hatred, dislike of male kind, stereotypical woman stuff. Truth be told, that's an interesting idea and something that I planned to address when I was writing my Pajama Diary script, but that's a very, very heavy and difficult topic to cover, and I'm not sure exactly how I would make it A, intelligently, because that's just a subject that I admit intimidates me a lot. I don't know if I could do it justice, and keep it entertaining at the same time. The same idea can also be applied to, you know, the idea of Hispanic culture in Baldo, or black culture in the Boondocks, all things that I think are worth looking at, certainly, but I don't know if I'm well equipped or have enough knowledge to sort of tackle those very serious and difficult subjects and topics yet. I hope to do it someday, though. Have you ever imagined Mac McMac speaking in the same voice as Pinky the Rat? Or Bucky speaking with Cartman's voice? No, I have not, but the next time I read Get Fuzzy, I'm gonna have to try that. Sounds like it could be amusing. In your reading of comics, do you prefer a more realistic or surreal art style, or does it depend on the context? It entirely depends on the context. Really realistic looking strips like Funky Winker Bean and Crankshaft, which are both drawn by the same guy, so that doesn't really count, but they both work for that sort of style because they're both more realistically centered strips. They focus on real events and deal with more realistic themes. Strips that are more bizarre and outworldly, like Bizarro or The Far Side, wouldn't look nearly as good with the realistic art style, so I'm glad to see the cartoony style. And I do like it when people can take cartoony stuff and still apply it to real world situations, the way Calvin and Hobbes stores or even retail. What is, in your opinion, the top 5 most influential comic strips? That's one that I definitely want to do, but it's going to be a top 5 list in the future because I really want to make sure I do my research and go way back in history and make sure I look at, you know, the early ones from the 1930s, the late 1800s, and other comics like those. So I don't want to just make that a short little answer here, but that is something I am planning to do at some point. You will get a response on that one. How do you make your episodes? What program do you use and what camera? You know, maybe for a future episode I'll do a full-length behind the scenes taking you from start to finish of how I do everything, but I'll give you a quick rundown of what I use. For my camera, I use a Canon Rebel T3i, and I use a Rode video microphone to capture most of my audio. When I bring everything into my computer, I use Final Cut Pro to do almost everything, but sometimes if I'm doing a green screen effect or something a little extra, I take it into After Effects. And to make sure that all the comics that I scan or download from the internet are good enough quality that you can read them even after I've blown them up to full screen, I simply just take those and I expand the scale in Photoshop. And that's all that I use. Have you ever tried to write or illustrate your own comic strip? If you did, how did it go? Yes, I have. And I'm not proud of what I did. When I was in about 5th or 6th grade, which was the late 90s, back when Pokemon was in its big swing, I got a stuffed Pikachu doll, and I decided to make the comic strip John and Pikachu, which was a very, very obvious ripoff of Calvin and Hobbes. I drew it on a legal pad with colored pencils. I don't think I have those anymore, and even if I did, I would be embarrassed to show them to you all because I am a terrible artist, and a lot of the strips and the jokes I took directly from Calvin and Hobbes. So I have tried, and I'm not going to again. I was actually just reminded of something else I did, which wasn't exactly a comic strip, but might be adaptable into a comic strip or graphic novel. When I was in 8th grade throughout most of my high school, I actually wrote a series of superhero novels starring me and my brother and my sister, the Terrific Trio. And yes, the influence that comic strips had was available once again because my superhero character's name was Stupendous Man, which I took from Calvin and Hobbes. We never actually drew anything. I wrote it all down in Microsoft Word. I used Comic Sans and MS for the font, I'm sorry to say. But at some point, maybe I'll share some of that with you guys. We had some behind the scenes sketches of, you know, just trying to flesh out the world, the universe that we had created. In retrospect, if I was to go back and do it again and really work on it, it might not be half bad. Something to think about. Will you stick to just comic strips, or will you expand to graphic novels sometime in the future? graphic novels, no. The way I see it, Linkara already has a pretty decent monopoly on looking at actual comic books and graphic novels, so I'm not going to try and shoe in on his territory. Unless I do a crossover with him, which would be totally awesome. What about webcomics? Some of them are made in a comic strip format, so I don't see a reason why they wouldn't qualify for your show. Yes, I actually would like to talk about webcomics at some point in the future. Not as often as I do newspaper comics, but I still might do a webcomic episode once every month or a couple of months or whenever I feel like it, because there are definitely some webcomics out there that are worth your time reading. Just off the top of my head, The Order of the Stick is good, and so is Sluggy Freelance. Are you a gamer? If yes, what are your favorite games? Yes, I am a gamer, and my favorite game of all time is Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. They only work if you combine the two with the lock-on technology. It was just a blast when I first got that game. I played through it as Sonic with my little sister as Tails, and we got all the Chaos Emeralds, all the Super Emeralds, we beat Dr. Robotnik, and it was just a blast from start to finish. I still have it on my emulator on my computer, and it's still fun to play whenever I need to unwind every once in a while. Some of my other favorite games include The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I have that on PC so I can play a whole bunch of mods on that, and I enjoy Battlefield 3. Do you read any graphic novels? Well, as you might have guessed from my poster that I have back in my set, I like Watchmen, but aside from that I really haven't read any graphic novels. I guess The Walking Dead is pretty good since it's been adapted into a TV show, but truth be told, my knowledge on graphic novels is about zilch. And that concludes our mailbag episode. Guys, thank you so much for sticking with the punchline for 10,000 plus views and watching me these past 8 months, and thank you for submitting all your questions. Stick with me because we're going to have a great 2013 together. See you next week.